All right. Come on in. Everybody in. Come on, come on, come on. It's too early to be in bed. Wake up. You were thinking of my genius? That's a funny thing to be thinking. Oh, you just finished reading Influence? So I'm here with my cat, Zoe. Zoe, get into the light. Come into the light. And I thought that while my cat licked my chin, we would talk about the basket of deplorables. I thought I was just going to go to bed, but then I turned on my phone and I saw some Twitter messages about something called the basket of deplorables. And suddenly my Twitter feed was filled to the brim with questions about the basket of deplorables. And I said to myself, what the hell is this basket of deplorables all about? Because I hadn't heard any of the news. So I looked into it a little bit, and people tweeted me links and saw that Hillary Clinton had categorized Trump supporters as roughly half of them being what she called the basket of deplorables. And so a lot of people wanted to know if on a persuasion level that was a good thing or a bad thing. And I think the assumption was that it must be a terrible thing to, call this huge percentage of Americans a basket of deplorables. But I think probably not. So my preliminary judgment on this, subject to revision based on how the public acts, is that the basket of deplorables things commented by Clinton will not be a big thing. All right. And here's why. First of all, the people who are in that category know they're in the category and they've already decided to, do what they're going to do, right? So nobody's really going to change votes because of this, because everybody either thinks they're not in that category and therefore, well, it's not about me. And I think, maybe I think those people are deplorable too. Or you're in that category and by her definition, you're already a Trump supporter, so they're not going to change their minds. So in a weird way, it's not really very persuasive. But more than that, and I think this is going to be more important than anything she said, in terms of what she meant, is that the term basket of deplorables is legitimately funny. Like, just, no argument about, who's in and who's out. I'll leave that to your own judgment. But just the label, basket of deplorables, is always funny every time you hear it. And already people were saying things like, that's a pretty cool label. I'd like to get into the club of the deplorables. So, no, I don't think it'll be a big thing. It'll be a funny thing, and it might dominate the news cycle for a little bit, but it's not going to move the needle at all, because it's not surprising, and it's too funny to, have some kind of a deep wound. She looked like she had some wine. Well, unlike Trump, we hear that Hillary does like a glass of wine once in a while. The deplorable six. So, you want to see my dog? Let me lift her up here. See if you can see her. That's Snickers. She usually sleeps on this side of me. While my cat, Zoe, is over here. What do I drink? I don't drink. Where are the hose at? Yeah, so some of you probably saw my tweet about Trump saying that Hillary Clinton could shoot somebody and get away with it. I think I laughed for half an hour after I saw that, because it was the Chiron, it's called the Chiron. It's that little running label at the bottom of the TV screen on the news channels. So CNN had a Chiron. Said, Trump says Clinton could shoot somebody and get away with it. And it's a perfect reversal of, what people were saying about Trump when he said he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. So it just makes the whole thing sound ridiculous. Just using it in another context makes it look like just a figure of speech, which is the brilliance of it. And it also calls into question the fact that she's been accused of literally having people killed, which frankly I don't think is true. But the fact that it's out there and it just makes you think of that gives it that funny association. So I missed the part about the coal miners. What was that about? Bill was mocking coal miners? Suggestions to improve memory and focus. I don't, but Amazon.com is almost certain to be selling some books on those titles. The Deplorables is an all-right band. I think it would have to be The Basket of Deplorables. Bill Clinton used the Make America Great Again slogan. Yeah, all the little gotcha stuff I think is terribly unpersuasive. He said the sky is blue, but the other one said the sky is blue too. Yeah, I heard about the Aleppo thing, but I don't think it's terribly important to anything. Yeah, does it feel to be deplorable? I don't think I was in any of those groups, but so technically I would be in the other half. Well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm not even the other half, because I'm not a Trump supporter. I endorsed Hillary Clinton for my personal safety. Don't you think that makes the alt-right less scary? Yeah, that's my point. It's just such a cute thing that it doesn't have any bite, and it actually takes all the the scare out of it. It was funnier. It was more persuasive when she was making them sound scary than it was when you give them a cool nickname. You could put that on your. That's something you might want on the back of your motorcycle jacket. It would be like the cutest motorcycle gang ever. What's your gang? Hell's Angels? No. Basket of Deplorables. That's who I roll with. Justin Moskowitz giving $20 million. How much does $20 million make any difference? Isn't that somewhat irrelevant? It does sound like a Mark Twain book, and I don't even know why. Maybe it's just because you said so. You just fell asleep for a few seconds? Oh my God, I got my hand in my head again. I keep doing that. Is the evisceration of Matt Lauer a warning to the other moderators? Yeah. I mean, exactly as you would expect to happen. I think anybody who goes soft on any of the candidates at this point is going to get spanked. I mean, especially after the rolled orange incident, the question on the orange. I mean, seriously, you've heard of softball questions, but the only thing softer than a softball is literally an orange with a question written on it. That's the softest of the softballs, the rolled orange. I think it's actually going to become a thing. Historians will talk about the time, that the phrase was coined, It's like, man, that was such an easy question. That was a total rolled orange. A rolled orange. It's 2 a.m. and Trump is tweeting. Well, it might be a good idea. I guess it would depend. I don't know much about the Twitter patterns and whether that's a good time in terms of making something viral or not. But I'm sure he's thought about it. I think it's just when he's in the mood for it. What's funny is I imagine him doing exactly what I'm doing. Actually literally being in bed like I am right now. Isn't it a fucking amazing world that I can, there's 318 people on here listening to me talk in my bed with my cat and my dog. I wonder what his pajama situation is. Everything is funnier when you put the word situation in it. What did Milo say? I don't know. I miss it. What did he say? Hypnotize you to sleep? I figure about 2 more minutes of me talking to you will put all of you to sleep. You think it's like the Romney 47% comment? Nah, I don't think so. Milo lies about the alt-right? In what way? He only wears a jacket to bed, no tie. Why is the thought of Trump in bed so entertaining? Like, for that matter, how does any billionaire go to bed? Is it really different? Because you kind of imagine it would be, right? Yeah, I always imagine there's like a servant rubbing their feet and stuff before bed and bringing that last glass of water, that sort of thing. Trump doesn't sleep; he waits. Is that a Chuck Norris joke that you repurposed? Because that is really funny. Trump doesn't sleep; he waits. I'm sure you didn't make that up, but it's damn funny. He would build a pillow wall. Why is that so funny? There's something just funny about Trump in bed in pajamas. That's just automatically funny, right? You don't have to add anything to that. It's just, your mind already fills in a bunch of jokes. He waits bigly. He hangs upside down in a basket. Oh, that's funny. I'm going to be giggling for half an hour about that. Yeah, so what about the Hillary's earpiece? Did that just sort of go away? And what happened? I suppose all that matters is that now that the question's been raised, that if she goes to any important event and has that in, that it's all anybody's going to talk about. So if it was useful before, it's probably not a useful tool now because putting it in just draws questions. So, yeah, I know there was a Huma email about it. So I don't think there's any question that it was what people thought. But, there's no rule against it, right? Is it the end of the world if somebody is using technology to enhance their performance? It just doesn't seem like the end of the world if she got outed for it. But at the same time, you think it's a hearing aid? It might be, huh? If it were a hearing aid, it would be in all the time, though. Oh, did Snopes say it was nothing? What did Snopes say? I didn't check. It's a reflection. Huh. Well, I'm willing to believe that it's not real. Snopes dopes. I would more likely bet with Snopes. I think if you had to put money on it, you probably want to bet on Snopes. Failing Snopes. He revealed it and everything. Oh, on Snopes they revealed that it was a reflection. Well, I think it would have been no big deal anyway, because even if it was something. Yeah, so that's why it died quickly. It wasn't real. Huh? Cuban on the stock sell-off. So, yeah, so Mark Cuban said that a Trump presidency would not be loved by Wall Street, and so that would cause uncertainty and stocks would plummet. But aren't they in a neck-and-neck race right now? I mean, that's the most uncertainty you could ever have, and the stock market's actually kind of doing okay. So, who gets to say what's uncertain? What could be more uncertain than a 50-50 chance of Trump or Clinton? If you imagine that those are wildly different outcomes, the most certain thing would be when one of them gets elected. And then you could finally say, aha, now we know what's up for the next 4 years. I mean, roughly speaking, we know what their emphasis will be. So, in a way, this is the most uncertain time, isn't it? It's a completely subjective situation, and I can't imagine that it gets less certain once you know who is the president. That seems like the more certain situation. Now, I get the point that Trump is assumed to be more change, but given that the country has an appetite for change, it's sort of the uncertainty that people want, right? You know, as a general rule, when things are going well, you don't want to change, and when things are not going well, or you think they're not going well, it only matters that you think that, then you're willing to take more risks to change something, right? Do you think Trump is running unopposed? You know, on any given week, it has seemed like that lately, just because of the sheer amount of coverage he gets, the amount of hours he's putting in compared to Clinton. So, yes, that bubble of perception is forming for sure. You think the stock market will burst in October? Well, October is kind of a good time for stock market corrections, right? I mean, it might, but it could for any reason, right? Sometimes it's just time. What do you think about Clinton speaking softly? Oh, the issue of people accusing Clinton of being shrill, which is sexist sounding. I mean, even to my ears, I'm pretty objective about these things, but shrill is a word that you're not going to hear applied to a guy, and if you do, it's probably a whole different another kind of insult. In other words, it would be sort of calling the guy feminine in some way if you heard it used as some kind of a negative insult by somebody. So, Yeah, I think that's how people would perceive it. You know, if somebody called a man that, that's what you would think they were calling them, right? And if they called a woman that, it sounds sexist. But it's interesting because if it changes what she's doing, just the fact that it changes what she's doing can throw her off her game. Because it takes a long time to get good at anything, right? To get good at a certain stump speech style. And if she has to move to a style that she hasn't practiced, doesn't feel natural, there might be a learning curve. And there's not much time left for a learning curve. So, but on the other hand, you know, Trump is pulling it off. He's changed his tone and he's reading from the teleprompter more, and so people can correct. Well, I already talked about the she could shoot someone and not get prosecuted thing. I think it was just a clever play off of the time that he said he could shoot somebody and his supporters would stay with him. It kind of makes the whole could shoot somebody thing seem a little ridiculous at first, and makes it seem like just a figure of speech, because now he's used it in two completely different senses. So it just diffuses whatever meaning you thought it had. Now he's used it in a completely different meaning, and you can't unsee that. So now it becomes part of, you know, how you conflate the, you know, all of those types of comments in your mind. Well, we don't know if Clinton has the same persuasion experts working on every element of her campaign and every decision. You would think that that would be unlikely, right? Unless that person quit their job and, you know, traveled around on the plane with the candidate or something. So my guess is that they get advice when they need it, and they may not be soliciting it for every item or every tweet or every decision, you know, every turn of a phrase. You know, I doubt there are any persuaders reading every line of every speech, for example. So what you would expect to see, if Clinton has some world-class persuaders on the team, as I have speculated she does, that you would see flashes of brilliance that look like, you know, deep persuasion, like the simultaneous use of the word dark for everything that Trump did. That looked like the work of an expert. But you would also expect that since she's saying a lot of stuff and tweeting a lot of stuff, giving a lot of speeches to a lot of different groups, that there would be a number of times where she's sub-optimizing her persuasion just because she's winging it. And, you know, you can't always be as good as the best persuader in the world if you're the candidate yourself. You can't be as good as all of your advisors put together. What about the stamina of persuasion? Well, I think that plays the confirmation bias, because every time she has a lighter schedule than Trump, people think, well, stamina. So it's a great contrast builder. Apple removing the iPhone jack. You know, removing the iPhone jack is part of keeping the money moving, because it's going to be one more reason you need to upgrade, and it keeps all the headphone adapter people happy and stuff. But I'm pretty sure that in the long run, it gets us to a better situation. I'm pretty sure they're looking for a cordless world, and I think we all want to be there. We just, everybody bitches about the transition. Yeah, Trump does have a cult of personality, absolutely. I mean, it's not the only reason people like him, but a lot of people are personality driven, for sure. take a position on the birther thing? That's a good question. Because it feels like it's not terribly relevant at the moment. I mean, so many other things have happened over the course of the year. It just seems like the birther questions maybe are too far down the queue of importance to the public at this point that is worthy of being a debate question. But on the other hand, people would love to hear the answer. So it's simultaneously the least important question while being high on the list of interesting. So if you're the debate host and you're the network putting it on, is your responsibility to the most important questions to the public, of which that definitely would not be one, or the most newsworthy question, which you could turn that into. Where would the responsibility be? Why didn't they use so dark, expose another journalist? I don't know what that means. Are you getting an iPhone 7? Yeah, eventually. I'm usually not the first one in on this stuff. Why do Democrats want to provoke World War III with Russia? I was just making a list on my man cave idea board about who the two candidates have targeted as what I would call enemies. If you think about it, and I haven't thought this through yet, so I'm not sure this is true. It seems like Trump is saying that Saudi Arabia is an enemy. And here I'll use enemy in the loosest general sense of, people we have a problem with. And Clinton is saying Russia's the enemy. They're both saying ISIS is an enemy, of course. But that's a pretty big difference. The Russia flip, yeah, coordinating with them. You could, on shrimps or shrooms? Mushrooms. Well, I can't give you advice on that. I'm not a doctor. I don't know why this is fun just to lay here and read your comments. I feel like I should be doing more to entertain you. Will you go on Joe Rogan's podcast? A lot of people have asked, and the answer is yeah. I mean, I'd have to be invited. It's not up to me to invite myself. But if you're asking me if invited, would I go? I would say yes in a heartbeat because I'm a big fan. Please don't. Why not? Is there some reason I shouldn't? Do you wear a sleeping cap? Does it look like it? Start my own podcast. I think about that all the time, but I gotta say, it's actually a special foam pillow. At least this one is. We ever do a Periscope or work on a Dilbert cartoon? Yeah, the trouble is that I can't really look at questions and answer them and draw and think and write and do all that stuff at the same time. But I was thinking about just turning it on and just sort of leaving it on and people could come in and out and and just watch the process, but I don't know if that was boring or not. Have you been on 4chan? Have not. I don't know how people go to 4chan in the first place. It struck me like smoking cigarettes. Like, I can see why somebody gets addicted to cigarettes. At the same time, I can see why, obviously by evidence, there are lots of people who use 4chan. But the first time before you've experienced either a cigarette or 4chan, all you've heard about is bad things about either one of them. So what makes people say, let me go try that thing that I've only heard bad things about? Because it must be the badness that attracts people to it, right? Now, once you get there, I understand people get addicted to cigarettes, and I could imagine that you would get addicted to, the free-willing, dangerous, high adrenaline of, the uncensored territory of 4chan. But I always wonder, what makes you go there in the first place? Like that initial decision, I'm always curious about that. Because I haven't felt the curiosity yet, and normally I would. Normally just because it's forbidden, I would want to go just, take a look. That would be my normal impulse. But I've only heard bad things about it. So it's such a bad rap, it's like it's not even worth a few keystrokes for me to check it out. And it's no big deal. Yeah, I think free speech, is, while it's a necessary right, it's totally overrated as a form of entertainment. Fortune is deplorable. Are you afraid of death? So I think about that all the time. I think about, dying alone, for example. And I've watched enough old people, in the grandfather class, both in-laws and my own, and then my parents as well, die. And the one thing I'm positive about is like that last week of life, when things really get terrible, the last thing people care about, as far as I can tell, is other people. They don't give a fuck about anything except, dying. And none of them wanted to live, at least none of the ones I saw. They seemed like they were all ready to check out by the time it was ready, by the time they were checking out. And also, science is so good at drugging them to the gills that every one of the oldsters I saw die naturally anyway. They were just all on morphine, and they were just in a whole other world. So their brains get turned off. So I suppose it would be, bad to die because your car went off a ravine and, you were there for 2 weeks undiscovered, and I suppose I'm afraid of that in some way. But if I were to die the way almost everybody dies, which is in some normal way, it's either going to be really quick and I don't see it coming, or in those final moments, I'm going to be so drugged that, like all the people I've watched die recently, it's not peaceful and it's not terrible. It just sort of doesn't exist. They just turn your brain off chemically, and you're happy for them to do it. So it's this, this mutual agreement that it's time to turn the mind off. So the mind is turned off for all practical purposes long before the body is dead. So you don't ever have to experience, in a normal situation, you don't have to experience the moment of thinking you're dying. I haven't seen that yet. Like, people don't think, I think I'm going to die in a minute. No, I'm sure people do in the military and under, accident situations. But under the normal person gets old and dies of old age sort of situation, the brain turns off long before the body does. So to answer your question, once you realize that, the only way you realize it is to see it happen a bunch of times, because otherwise you think, well, I'm just hearing it from this one guy, and I have no direct evidence that this is the case. But ask around, and people tend not to be really mentally there by the time their body dies. Code reuse, next life. If we're software, there's a lot of code reuse going on. And that's hint number 2 about why we're in a movie script. I'll say no more. Enemy can either be created or destroyed. Well, that sounds deep, but I don't know what you're talking about. Best time for Assange to drop the new leaks. Here's the thing. I can't imagine there's any reason to wait. It's not like they're spending all their time editing or whatever. Whatever they have, I'm sure they have. And if it was terrible, he would have released it. I just don't think there's much coming. I think it's going to be underwhelming. It might be something that Assange thinks is terribly important, but he's kind of close to it, and he may think that the voters are rational, and if he gives them some rational reason to distrust Clinton, that it would make a difference. But voters aren't rational, so it's not going to make much difference, what those WikiLeaks say, unless it's some just shocking thing. But if it's just, some amplification of things we've heard before, I don't think that makes any difference. And when I say it doesn't make any difference, it could make a 1% difference, and 1% difference could give Trump a landslide. But it's not going to be some kind of knockout punch or something. After the election, I'm having trouble imagining I'm going to care about any of this enough, because it goes into this whole new phase where it's just sort of business or worse, it's just waiting for the, to be sworn in. 9/11 has helped Trump being from New York and all. Probably any time that the public thinks about 9/11, it helps Trump. That's my guess. Because when you think of 9/11, you think of American patriotism, and there are actually studies, you'll read about this in Cialdini's book, Persuasion, that when people are shown the American flag and then asked to vote for a candidate, they're more likely to lean Republican if they vote immediately after being shown a flag. Because once you arouse in them their patriotic feelings, they go with the party that does a little bit better in branding patriotic. The Democratic Party is a little more better branding, globally inclusive stuff. He sports Kaepernick. Who does? Well, Colin. Oh, so here. Let me give a little advice to Colin Kaepernick and was it the Seahawks, who are rumored to maybe want to join Kaepernick in sitting out the national anthem. So that's probably just a rumor. I don't know if any of that's true. But here's a little persuasion advice. If they want to really make their point about America and the situation for African Americans, which I believe is the message they're trying to put forward, and by the way, I completely respect anybody who's willing to sacrifice his career and his reputation, which I think he's doing. I know some people are saying he's trying to gain from the attention, but I don't see it that way. I think that's a gigantic risk. And if he sees it as being that important, I think we have an obligation as fellow citizens to hear him out, right? You don't do that kind of shit unless you really feel it's important and you're pretty sure other people feel the same way. But that said, 9/11 signifies more than the country. It signifies a lot of individual heroes, especially first responders and such, and the victims, of course. So I've said that I support Kaepernick sitting during the national anthem because we're a country of free speech. And while I find it offensive, that's also why it's effective. Right? So my patriotic feeling is offended by the fact that he sits during the national anthem and, hey, we're supposed to be on the same team. So yes, it bothers me a lot, right? Just on an emotional level. Same as you. If you're American, it just bothers you automatically. That said, I like the fact that he feels so strongly and he's willing to take this risk. You have to kind of respect that. That said, if he does it on 9/11, fuck him. I mean, just fuck him. So if he's smart, he'll stand on 9/11 because it's 9/11. All right. So this is my free advice to Colin Kaepernick, with respect, by the way, because I'm telling you, I do respect the decision he's taken to sit for the national anthem. But if he does it on 9/11, that's a different message. And then, fuck him. I mean, fuck him. You can't support that, right? So the smartest thing you could do is to stand on 9/11. And then, oh my God, that's smart. It's actually the best thing he could do. I mean, we would turn his message from, I'm just an asshole, into, no, I do respect things worthy of respect. If something is worthy of respect, and the 9/11 responders are, then he'll stand. That's his whole point, right? So he loses his point if he sits on 9/11. Not only does he lose it, he loses it badder than anybody ever lost anything. I know badder isn't a word, but it was funnier that way. You could not fail harder than that if he doesn't stand on 9/11. But if he does, he'll probably win about as hard as you can win, as long as he explains it that way. He just says, look, I'm making a point about the country. I'm not making a point about the first responders. I'll be standing. Now, if he does that, a lot of people are going to see him in a totally different light. Painted himself into a corner. Yeah, maybe. But, I think he could get out and get a little paint on his feet and still be okay. His thinking is not so sophisticated. That sounds a little racist. I heard a couple of snippets of interviews, and he sounded pretty smart to me. Hillary's plane has UN colors. I think that's too much of a stretch. People aren't going to make that association. Kaepernick is doing it for attention. If he is, that's sort of like setting yourself on fire. It's like the Tibetan monk is setting himself on fire for attention. Yeah, it's sort of true. Big sell-off Friday. Are you saying that the stocks sold off today? I haven't checked my stocks today. He bagged Hillary as well, yeah. All right. You probably need to get to bed. So do I. 2.5% loss today. Why was there some uncertainty today? What bullshit reason did the television tell you was the reason why? Oh, interest rate hikes. Okay, that's not a bullshit reason. Did they actually get hiked? Or just the... Oh, likely. Okay. All right, everybody. More tomorrow. See you guys in the morning. Good night.